My name is Xavier. I'm 38 years old, and I was the steady, unseen backbone of global dynamics for 15 years. I knew how the company really worked. I knew where all the bodies were buried, and I was the one who kept the lights on. I was the Chief Operations Analyst. My boss was Mr. Wallace, who was 62 years old, the CEO. He was a decent man in many ways. He respected hard work and loyalty, which is why I lasted so long. But Mr. Wallace was completely blind when it came to his son, Garrett, who was 26 years old. Garrett was nothing but a parasite, a drain on the company's resources. He walked around like he owned the place, which he practically did thanks to his last name. He had the title of VP of Strategic Initiatives, a title he simply bought with his birthright. I had watched him for 2 long, painful years. I saw him steal credit for other people's successes. I watched him botch project after project, costing the company time and money. He generally poisoned the work environment for every single person who actually did the hard work. He was a cancer on the staff. But the one thing that truly rankled me, the thing he used to grind us down, was a constant, smug reminder that he was Ivy League. He claimed to be a graduate of the most prestigious, exclusive university in the entire country. He threw that degree around like it was a shield and a weapon at the same time. He used it to dismiss the rest of us. 2 months before the annual company gala, the tension finally snapped. Garrett assigned me a truly massive, impossible task. It was an enormous data consolidation project, a task he knew would overwhelm any one person. He set me up to fail. When the project inevitably collapsed under its own weight, he seized the opportunity. He publicly blamed me for the failure in the company meeting with the entire senior team. He didn't just criticize my work, he attacked my worth. He called me uneducated. That single word, delivered with such a smug, contemptuous sneer, was the switch that flipped in my mind. The damage to my career was already done, but now revenge became my sole mission in life. I wasn't going to let that word stand. I started my counterattack with the only piece of paper that gave him power, his background check. I went into his hiring file late one night. It was a ridiculously flimsy, single-page document. The university was listed, but the contact information for the registrar's office was fuzzy and looked slightly doctored. That fuzzy detail was all I needed to confirm my suspicion. The degree felt fake. It felt cheap. I decided that I had to dig deeper to find the truth, no matter the cost or how long it took. I started using every single contact and every single connection I had built over my 15 years of loyalty to the company. I felt like a detective, working late nights in the quiet, empty office. My focus was absolute. I was no longer an analyst. I was an investigator, building a case for ruling. The quiet office nights were spent staring at his fraudulent details, fueling my cold, hard rage. I would not stop until I had the truth. The world would soon see who was truly uneducated. The first contact I reached out to was someone I knew I could trust implicitly. It was my old college roommate, a man named Eric. He was perfect for the job because he now worked in the IT security department at the very university Garrett claimed to have attended. I was very careful with my words. I asked him to run a quiet, specific query. I asked him to cross-reference all alumni records with the name Garrett Wallace and the listed birthday and graduation year. It was a simple data search, a ghost hunt. Eric was professional. He knew I wouldn't ask unless it was serious. He called me back 2 days later. His voice was low and cautious. "There's no Garrett Wallace matching that birthday in our system," he said. "We can find a lot of other Wallaces, but not him. He doesn't exist." I felt a jolt run through me. It was a rush of cold, deep satisfaction. The pieces were starting to fall into place exactly as I had hoped. The prestigious job, the smug attitude, the entire facade he had built for 2 years, it was all built on one monstrous lie. I didn't stop there. I needed the official paper proof. I contacted the university's registrar's office directly, pretending to be a background verification service for a new company. They confirmed everything Eric had told me. "We have no record of a Garrett Wallace ever being enrolled at this institution," the representative stated clearly. I requested and received the official documentation of the falsified enrollment, a clear letter on university letterhead, and I had it notarized immediately. The ink was dry on his destruction. The thrill was cold and deep. I had the official documentation of the falsified enrollment, notarized. The lie was now a fact, and that fact was mine. The moment had finally arrived. The annual company dinner, the most important social event of the year, was my stage. It was held at the city's grandest, most famous hotel ballroom. The venue itself screamed money and power. Every major investor, every board member, every key employee of Global Dynamics was there. The entire Wallace family, the corporate royalty, was present. Garrett looked especially self-important. He was the center of a small galaxy of executives who were nodding eagerly at his every empty word. Laughing too loudly at his weak jokes, he was soaking up the false adoration. I walked into the ballroom, dressed in my best suit, a suit I hadn't worn since my own small graduation. I was carrying a plain black leather briefcase. It looked normal, professional, but it was anything but. The briefcase contained the entire engine of my revenge. It held three things of vital importance: my carefully crafted resignation letter, the stack of official notarized proof of Garrett's fraud, and, most importantly, a small, powerful wireless projector I had bought specifically for this moment. I had practiced with it for hours. This was not going to be a quiet HR matter. I wasn't just going to expose him to the company, I was going to expose him to the city's financial elite. The room was full of hundreds of the most powerful people in the city, and they were all about to witness the most spectacular downfall of their year. The main course had been cleared. The room was quiet with anticipation. Mr. Wallace stood up from the head table to give his annual important speech. He was a decent man, but he was about to face the deepest possible betrayal. He spent a long 10 minutes praising Garrett, calling him the brilliant future of the company, the man who would take Global Dynamics to the next level. The applause that followed was polite, but clearly reserved. Everyone knew Garrett was a hollow suit. Garrett stood up next. He gave a boilerplate, boring speech about synergy and moving forward. Then, he did exactly what I knew he would do. He turned his attention directly to me, picking me out of the crowd. He wanted to deliver one last public slap. I want to thank the small people, the ones who follow directions, he said, a mean, thin smirk pulling at his lips. Like Xavier, who tries hard, even if he doesn't have the educational background to grasp big picture strategy. He raised his crystal champagne glass high, not in a true thank you, but in a mockery of a toast. He wanted to dismiss me one final time. I took a deep, steadying breath. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear and absolutely calm. I had waited months for this specific moment. The game was now in my hands. I didn't hesitate. I stood up from my table at the back of the room. The sudden movement drew every eye to me. Garrett looked completely surprised, his smirk instantly freezing. He hadn't expected a sheep to stand up. "Sit down, Xavier," he said, his voice hard, dropping the polite tone immediately. "The floor is closed. This is an executive function." I ignored him completely. My focus was on the hundreds of faces watching. "I'd like to offer a counter toast," I said, my voice cutting cleanly and clearly across the enormous ballroom. The sound echoed slightly. Mr. Wallace looked completely confused by my sudden interruption, his expression mixing surprise and mild concern. Garrett, enraged by my defiance, started moving toward me, his face quickly turning a deep, angry red. He wanted to silence me immediately. I said, "Sit down, nobody!" He spat, his voice loud, desperate, and completely unprofessional. He didn't care who heard him. "You're a nobody, Xavier. You always have been, and you always will be." The room fell into a heavy, stunning silence. I didn't flinch or look away. I let the terrible, damning word "nobody" hang in the air for a perfect, agonizing beat. It was the last, final insult that gave me the right to destroy him utterly. The word "nobody" had done its work. The entire ballroom was focused on Garrett's aggressive, unhinged behavior and my defiant stand. I didn't say another word. I simply set my black briefcase on the small table next to me and flicked the latches open with 2 quick, loud clicks. I quickly pulled out the small, compact projector and the sleek tablet. My hands were steady, working with the speed and precision of someone who had practiced this exact move countless times. I aimed the powerful projector at the massive wide screen behind the head table. This was the screen they normally use for the corporate logo and boring graphs. I plugged the tablet into the projector's video import. Garrett started to charge at me, finally realizing that I was not just giving a speech, but he was far too late. The screen flashed a sudden, bright white. It instantly cleared, then showed my tablet's desktop. The title of the document I had opened was displayed in giant, bold, impossible to miss letters for everyone to see. It read, "Garrett Wallace, Academic Fraud Investigation." A wave of loud gasps rippled and spread through the hundreds of powerful people in the room. The silence was broken, replaced by immediate, furious shock. I had the room's absolute, undivided attention. I decided to speak directly to Mr. Wallace first, giving him the courtesy of my explanation before the absolute humiliation of his son. Mr. Wallace, I'm truly sorry for creating this scene, I said, my voice clear and projecting without needing to yell. But the integrity of this company, which I have given 15 years of my life to, is at stake. I paused for just a second to let the gravity of my statement sink in. Then I clicked the first slide on the tablet. The corporate logo behind the head table was instantly replaced by an image. It was a perfectly clear, high-resolution screenshot of the official university's registrar's page. In huge red font, it showed the result of the search for Garrett Wallace. No record found. I narrated the findings simply and cleanly. This is a direct denial of enrollment from the university's registrar's office, I said, making sure to use the formal, damning title. They state that the degree Garrett claims to hold, the one he uses to dismiss the rest of us, is a complete fabrication. Garrett finally found his voice, a choked, frantic, animal noise. He tried to yell a protest, but the sound was choked with pure, absolute panic. The board's lawyer, a tough, formidable woman named Miss Chen, who was 55 years old, was sitting near the front. She was watching me intently, her eyes narrowed with sharp, professional focus. The truth was out. I moved to the next piece of evidence, the most visually devastating proof of the lie. I clicked to the next slide. It was a high-resolution, professional photograph of the fake diploma that Garrett had proudly framed and hung on his office wall. Immediately below the image of the counterfeit paper, I projected the official university letterhead that I had requested from their legal department. The text on the letterhead stated in clear, formal terms that the document was a confirmed counterfeit and a forgery. I had this document professionally reviewed by the university's legal department. I explained to the silent, horrified room. It's a forgery. Garrett was finally able to move, galvanized by the extreme public exposure. He charged the head table, pure rage and terror on his face. "Turn that off," he shouted, his voice cracking with fear. "This is a lie. It's all a damn lie." Mr. Wallace finally acted. He reached out and grabbed his son's arm, holding him back with a surprising show of strength, his own face now pale with dawning horror. I looked directly at Garrett, my face utterly devoid of any emotion, completely cold. "You called me uneducated," I said, letting the words hang between us. "But I earned my 2-year degree with hard work and study, and you bought a piece of paper that isn't worth the cheap ink it was printed with." The comparison was final. I clicked the final, truly devastating slide. I had saved the worst part for the very end. This evidence would not just ruin Garrett. It would hurt the entire Wallace family. I projected a clear, documented series of wire transfers from Garrett's personal bank account. The transfers were all directed to a known, confirmed diploma mill in a country in Eastern Europe. The dates matched the time of his supposed graduation. "This is the documented source of the fake degree," I said. I paused to let the audience do the math, and the price of that piece of paper was $75,000. Money, Mr. Wallace, that you trusted him with as an executive of this company. Money that he stole from your family to buy a lie. The financial aspect was the nail in the coffin. Mr. Wallace looked like he had literally been struck across the face. The shock and profound betrayal were crippling him. He staggered slightly, his grip on his son weakening. The entire room was no longer just whispering. It was buzzing with furious, frantic discussion. The carefully constructed prestige of the Wallace name was visibly shattering in front of the city's financial elite. Miss Chen stood up from the board table, immediately pulling out her phone. Her expression was deadly serious. The moment of no return had been passed. The moment of truth had arrived for the CEO. Mr. Wallace slowly let go of his son's arm. Garrett did not try to run or fight. He simply stood there, beaten. The CEO walked slowly, painfully toward me. His eyes were full of a profound, devastating sadness and betrayal. "Is this true, Garrett?" he asked, his voice barely a raw whisper that somehow carried through the sudden lull in the room's noise. The question hung there, a silent acknowledgement of the truth. Garrett could not answer. He was utterly defeated, unable to form a single word of defense or denial. I didn't wait for the inevitable, horrible fallout that was about to engulf the Wallace family. My work was complete. I placed my formal, typed resignation letter on the head table, laying it right next to Mr. Wallace's water glass. I made sure my voice was firm and carried across the quiet ballroom. My work here is done, I announced to the room. I cannot in good conscience work for a company whose future VP is a documented fraud who stole money to buy a lie. I value my time here, but integrity comes first. I looked at Garrett one last time. My face was a mask of cold triumph. Enjoy your future, nobody. I picked up my empty briefcase and turned my back on the head table, the disaster I had created. I walked slowly away. The crowd that moments ago had been gossiping angrily now parted for me. They knew what they had just witnessed. No one spoke to me, but their faces told the entire story. They were watching the complete and final end of Garrett Wallace's entire life. He was destroyed. As I reached the grand exit doors of the ballroom, the ultimate confirmation of his ruin came. I heard the sharp, cold voice of Miss Chen speaking into her phone. Her voice was utterly professional, stripped of all emotion, like a lawyer closing a deal. Yes, I need to call the full board of directors. This is an immediate termination situation. He has committed severe corporate fraud and embezzlement of funds. Garrett was left standing next to his devastated father, frozen in place. The powerful projector was still beaming his humiliation onto the giant screen behind them. He had no future at the company, no genuine degree, no respect, and soon no father's trust. I pushed open the heavy hotel doors and walked out into the cool night air. The air was clean and fresh. I had destroyed the man who had called me a nobody, and I had fully regained my pride. The nobody had just taken down the arrogant prince in the most public way possible. My revenge was complete. The celebration of my freedom had begun.